We provide direct legal representation to the community. We are what is known a full scope representation shop. Basically, we take cases from the beginning, from the time the client seeks our services, to possibly the best possible outcome and guiding them through the system, navigate all, the possible avenues they have for relief to be able to remain in the United States legally. Rural California is a severely underserved community of migrants who are working in the agricultural industry and the service industry. Particularly in Santa Cruz County, you have service worker and agricultural workers who are basically first or second generation, mainly Mexicans. But the history of Santa Cruz County is not about migrants from Mexico, migrants from the Philippines, migrants from Croatia, migrants from Ireland in Salinas. So it is just, the color has changed, but the reality of people seeking for opportunity and the opportunity to work in the agricultural industry is here. This document is the end of the last action of the system against an individual who's been here since 1988. It's the order of the judge basically telling them you don't have a right to remain in the United States. I'm denying all the applications that you presented to the court, and now you need to make arrangements to leave. So it's just basically how this document represents the end of a life, the end of a dream, the end of a family unit, especially for an elderly man who is sick and the family is sick, is the end, and for seeing a life in a place you have not been to in many years is shocking, and it's all in a piece of paper. This is the end of the end of the line, and it's a simple one page that basically represent a lifetime in a system.
My name is Luis.
My name is Ricardo.
I'm from Mexico.
I'm from Mexico.
I came to stay in 2004, 15 years old. First time I come over here.
I came in 1997. I was 17.
I came to New York first, and then after 2 years, I moved to San Francisco. It's really hard to be, separated of my family. So that's kind of hard.
I came to LA first, then I went to Colorado. I don't like snow. So that's when I moved to the Bay Area, and I like it here. So I've been here 21 years now.
A lot of people in Mexico talk about how you get here. Just to cross the border, it take me probably like 5 hours. But just to be with my family, it take me like a month.
I was crossing the border. I got caught 3 times. On my 4th attempt, I cross the border. We have to walk for like 3 days. Then I make it here after 3 days. There's many people that die. And I didn't know. If I knew, I would bring some water and food. They say it was 3 hours walk, but we ended up doing 3 days.
I think a lot of people come to the country because they want a better life. They wanna just get like more opportunities.
Migration it has done like since humans exist. It's not that only people coming in from Mexico. There's people from here living there and from other places, and to me that's not like a big thing that people came from one country to another. Like, if you're not doing nothing wrong, I mean, you're welcome to everywhere you want to be.
Because right now we live here, so we treat China as another home, second home now. Used to be America is the second home. They come from far away from China, right?
Yeah.
To America, but now they America they remind all these people gather around here, same goal, and then combine with the same agreement to make this popular, make this alive, make this happen. And then it's just like here is just like hometown in China. This is the old school way. Old school. That means it was originally made that way. Now they have machine. They make 1 million a day.
How many do you make in a day?
15,000. By hand, one by one.
Makes it more special though.
Yeah, very special.
Are you burning your hand?
I am burning my hand, but I didn't tell you, right?
You hide it well.
I had what?
I will. That's right.
Here's the cookie. Pumps out the batter from here, and goes around 4.5 minutes. And this thing is 475 degree hot. Everyone's like this. Okay. Anybody, you can write fortunes. You can write your own fortune and put it in there. And we can customize it and then insert it in the right way. I make cookie. I see the people every day coming from around the world. I feel more happy because they love me. I gotta love them. And how I love them? Offer them a flat cookie to taste when they first come in, because they come from far away just to see me. And I feel more happy and do the cookie, make cookie right to them. And I always say, art is cookie, cookie is art, or a Golden Gate.
de México, obviamente, y llegué aquí en el 2002 y empecé en Charlie Hong Kong en 2004.
Yo soy del estado de Oaxaca. Llegué aquí en el 94 y empecé a trabajar aquí en el 99, aquí en Charlie Hong Kong, hasta la fecha. Unos parientes míos, ellos fueron los que me llevaron a trabajar aquí en el 99, aquí en Charlie Hong Kong lavando trastes, y hasta ahorita que ya estoy, después de muchos tiempos, de encargado. Mi función aquí es el encargado de la cocina y me encargo de hacer las órdenes, vegetales, carnes, salmón, y camarones, y entro a las 7:30 y es mi trabajo en la cocina y ver que todo esté bien.
Aquí en el trabajo nos dan la libertad de poder nosotros, si queremos cambiar algo en las recetas o algo, nos dan siempre la libertad de que ustedes son los que están ahí, ustedes saben. Y nada, yo creo que por eso el negocio ha sido como, ha ido creciendo. Ok, bueno, migración es algo fuerte porque la verdad la gente que emigra, que se puede decir, es porque en nuestros países no tuvimos la oportunidad a lo mejor de estudiar o algún trabajo y es, pues hay que buscarle, la gente tiene que buscar trabajo y ayudas para la familia y pues esa fue una de las formas de que se sale uno de México.
La vida es muy diferente y pues allá trabajaba yo también en el campo, ahí dándole a mis parientes también, pero ya hasta cuando vine para acá a los 14 años, solo, y pues es muy diferente el trabajo aquí al de allá, porque cuando empecé aquí en el campo, pues obvio que, allá trabajaba en el campo, pero más suave y aquí muy pesado. Y pues aquí se vive mejor que allá, porque allá cuando uno cobra pues es menos dinero que aquí. Aquí es dólares y hay pesos mexicanos, se hace mucha diferencia.
Puro comadre, toma, puro compadre y al otro güey nada, y no mames.
Alinex, buenos días, ¿cómo está?
¿Sí está bien?
Sí, está bien, donde sea por ahí, póngala.
Okay.
¿Trae la nota?
Sí, sí.
Para hacerle el cheque. Mi nombre es María Estrada de Félix, nací en Zacatecas, en México, en el estado de Zacatecas. Aquí tengo 22 años en esta tiendita. Después de esta tiendita trabajé 17 años piscando fresa. Por falta de trabajo, queríamos una vida un poco mejor. Buscando trabajo emigramos aquí. Pues al venirme aquí a Estados Unidos, lo primero que enfrentamos es que no teníamos papeles. No donde quiera nos daban trabajo. Teníamos que trabajar en el FIC porque en lugares necesitábamos tener trabajo, estudio o alguna experiencia y no teníamos ninguna experiencia. Pero yo al poco tiempo empecé a pensar que el FIC no era lo mejor. Yo quería darle a mis hijos una educación, quería que mis hijos tuvieran estudio y pensamos en esforzarnos y poner esta tiendita y gracias a Dios logré mis éxitos. Mis hijos tuvieron educación y yo estoy aquí, pero ellos tienen educación. ¿Quieres regulares o los más grandes? ¿Los chiquitos o más grandes?
¿Regulares o grandes? Grandes.
¿Más grandes?
Sí.
Dale la bolsita porque está guardando lo caliente ahí. ¿Con todo, dice?
Sí.
¿Nomás uno?
No, va a ser dos.
¿Dos? ¿El otro del mismo tamaño?
Sí. El otro va a ser de asada.
La pinza del pastor. Dice que con todo
Sí.
se le pone cilantro y su salsa. Empecé a cocinar mi arroz al estilo México, mis papitas con mucho amor y empezaron los niños a mirar a los de la high school y todos a venir a comprar un burrito y les encantaba porque eran comida fresca, les decían a sus papás y así fue como me trajeron a sus papás y me fui clientelando y hoy tengo pues poquita más clientela, pero sí era difícil. Pues mi mamá faltó, quedamos huérfanos y yo me hice cargo de mis hermanitos y siempre cocinaba para ellos con mucho cariño y ahora siempre que cocino tengo que cocinar con mucho cariño porque yo desde chiquita cociné. A mí no me importa si algo no sabe o no está bueno o me lo hicieron mal, no te apures, hacemos otra vez las cosas y todo tiene que ser fresco. A mí no me interesa madrugar temprano para tenerle las cazuelas de arroz a los niños cuando vienen a hacer su burrito que sea fresco. Eso, ven a pagar, hijo, si quieres pagar. Y digo, pienso que todo tiene que ser con amor para que funcione. Yo pienso que me ha funcionado ya 22 años de estar aquí. No tengo ningún conflicto, nada con nadie, los niños vienen, compran sus burritos, toda la gente viene, nunca he tenido ninguna, ¿cómo se dice? Ningún complaint hacia nada. Yo pienso que es por lo mismo que ven que uno hace las cosas con mucho cariño. $4.51, $56. Hijas, ¿te van a caer de la cocina? Sí. Espérenme, ya saben, no se me pasen porque si no...
Gracias.
No les dan gracias.
¿Qué onda, Iván?
¿Con salsa y aguacate?
Regular.
Súper de asado.
¿Con avocado?
Sí, aquí está, mijo. Ya está tu súper de asada. Miro, ¿este de quién es? ¿Para ti qué te diste? ¿Una torta de asada? Digo que es de 50 centavos, pero $7 para ti.
Macarrones sin cebolla.
Si no, lleva cebollita.
Para mí, desde que llegué aquí, no hay domingos ni días de fiestas. Trabajo los 7 días de la semana, todos los días de la semana y he logrado lo que he querido, trabajar. Si tú trabajas y actúas con cariño, sin envidia ni nada, todo en la vida siempre te va bien. Echándole ganas, sí se puede en este país sobresalir, se cumplen tus sueños. Lo más difícil es no trabajar, que la gente no quiera trabajar. Pero yo ese consejo sí le doy, si le echas ganas y trabajas, sigue adelante. Estamos bien, pienso que estamos bien así. Hemos salido adelante.
Alright, so this is the multi-purpose garage. There we go.
My dad's always been really supportive of everything I kind of start getting into, and like I told him that I needed a space to better like do my microblading. He came up here and basically like painted the entire garage, installed like this flooring, and he like installed the mirrors and everything all in one day. And then he drove back home after that, and he just did that because he like just wants to see me succeed at the things I decide to go into.
I want to say I've been dancing competitively for like 8 years. I think originally, like when I was younger, it was just something to do. It was fun and like exciting, and I think growing more into it, I've matured as a dancer, and I've been able to create. I'm currently on a company called Academy of Villains. Honestly, I've never been on a team that trains as hard as Academy of Villains does. With Academy of Villains, it's definitely about like the pep talk and the motivation going into it. I think there's a lot of purpose behind the things that we do.
Together, let's do it together. Let's go. 1, 2 times, go. Stop trying to go hard and do it together.
There are a lot of people of color in the hip hop community, and a lot of people that come from, you know, places of oppression or, you know, just like similar situations. And I feel like we all find community, and we all find a way to like embrace our culture. You know, they moved to this country from Guatemala at a very young age, like younger than my age right now. I think they were like 18 or something like that. And they just came in hopes of like finding financial stability, obviously, and they wanted to have a kid, which is me. And they wanted to be able to give me everything I ever wanted, but obviously that's really difficult for like a immigrant family. They really like that I dance because they like that I'm keeping myself entertained with something, and they're proud when they watch me like perform.
Most of my clients are my friends or their students, so I don't like to charge as much, but it's still an expensive thing to do and it's time consuming, so I do charge $220 to $270 depending on how bold the brow is. It was a class with about 8 people, and there were 2 instructors, so it was like really, really hands-on. And it was a 4-day intensive, and on the very last day we actually got to practice on like our first like human models.
Growing up, I was always ashamed to like tell people what my parents did for a living, because they had very like stereotypical immigrant jobs. I feel so bad that like that's what I used to like, that I used to be ashamed of that, because that's what put a roof over my head, you know? I think growing up, I see how much they struggle and how hard they work to make such little money, and it's all for me. It's all for me to grow up and have a better life than they had. it affects me in a positive way because it makes me want to push harder. It makes me want to give back, and it makes me not want to work the way that they do for the amount of money that they get paid. You know, I don't think that's fair. My parents are pushing hard for something. They pushed hard for something, and I'm pushing hard for something too. Do pigment mask on that. So this is me just pushing the pigment into the little incisions. I think their biggest dream is to watch me like graduate from college, but obviously they have seen me try several different things throughout my life, and they're really proud when I succeed in them. So as long as I can maintain the balance, they're like extremely proud of me.
It's just a stories, that's what they call it. I got scared. I kind of said it like it was. Did I do that? Oh. We should go. I don't want to stick out. No, I'm not sitting in that. No. Dude, I wish we could go into the bakery, but I can't eat any of that shit. Right. Gotta get the right mushrooms. I didn't start like getting into like Korean food until I was like an adult, like on my own volition, because my mom was adopted and like raised by white people. So like I didn't eat this stuff growing up, but like as an adult, I felt like food was probably like the easiest way to get in touch with my culture. Like I feel like in elementary school, I was like the only Asian kid I knew. I had no fucking idea like what that meant, like what it meant to be Asian. I knew I wasn't Chinese, but they would call me Chinese, and I had no way to like contextualize like who I was and why I was different from them. Definitely like a big part of the lyrics that I write and stuff is like coming from a place of like difficulty around like identity, which I think mostly tends to manifest with like transgender stuff. I've always felt confused as to like where I could fit in to like categories that would not only help other people make sense of me, but would help me make sense of me. Because also being like half Asian too, once I got older, it was like couldn't necessarily fit in with white kids because I looked kind of Asian, and then for the Asian kids I was like too white because I like didn't speak my language, I didn't listen to Korean music, like, you know, so I was like too white or too Asian for like either side. It was always hard for me to find like an experience, you know, because I think the thing with like categories and culture and stuff like that is because you have like a shared experience with people, and it was hard for me to figure out like what my experience was and like who I shared that with, who I could talk to about it, like having a sense of community. And yeah, I don't know. It's so definitely, I think my lyrics are a lot about that, like kind of that confusion and like looking for that sense of self and like understanding my experience, you know what I mean? I appreciate being Asian and like being in aggressive music and being able to have like a different perspective and share that with people, you know? Like, I think it's sick.
The thing I remember most is my mom telling me that we weren't Chinese. And that's a whole complicated thing with like Taiwanese politics. My mom was always telling me like, oh, like we're here just because we can get our food here, but we're not like them. My mom's from Kaohsiung and my dad is also technically from Kaohsiung, but he was raised partly in China as well because my grandpa was very traditional in the fact that he wanted to go back to China. But he kept thinking like democracy was going to take over China because he agreed with that, but it never did, fully at least, so they never went back. In Taiwanese culture, being a man is having a family, carrying on the last name, that sort of tradition. When I got diagnosed with depression when I was like 8, they were like, my dad was like, that's not real, like, he's weak. And my mom, that's when like her change of heart really hit in, and it was just like, no, like that's my son. Whatever he's feeling is real. My dad's like extremely depressed. He'll never admit it till the day he dies. But it's just, I don't know. Growing up Asian has its perks, but it also has its downsides. You know. I talk a lot about stereotypes. Growing up in San Jose is a little different because Asians aren't just like the model minority. There's like hood-ass Asian fools, you know, like Vietnamese Crips and whatnot. And growing up, like the local sheriffs thought I was a drug dealer, like just from how I looked. So I have a song called 245A, which is the charge I was charged with when I was 16. And it's about how I felt I was treated by the police. In no way am I speaking for like all Asian people. I'm sure they disagree with me, but it's about that and also about how I feel in my own skin. It's always a battle between am I American or am I Taiwanese? And it's not always a battle. Sometimes it's just like I'm in acceptance about it and I embrace who I am. But it depends on what side of the bed I wake up on.
姚凯西，然后我是我们 Chinese Union at UCSC 的 Vice President。我今年大4，然后是 Business Management 专业的。Chinese Union 的话是美国政府认证的一个非营利性组织，然后现在是在加州一共有14个分部，然后我们 Santa Cruz 是其中的一个 division。现在是所有加州的一个中国同学的组织。我们是一个公益性组织，我们就是主要是帮助初到美国的中国同学，让他们了解美国，帮他们就适应美国的这里的大学生活什么的。每逢佳节倍思亲嘛，但是在美国我们没有一些中国的那些节假日，所以我们中国人就自己凑在一起举行一些活动。而且大家都比较喜欢吃嘛，然后而且就是天气也挺冷，然后吃一些热的东西可能会让大家就是感觉很温暖啊什么的，所以我们就想做一个夜市的活动。
下面有请尊师的白佛和张福山。世界很大很乱，地球在转，是无情的中被轮换。总是想太多，看得多，是都别想。简单的吃一顿，再一餐，直到让双眼都发亮，让所有运动消耗掉多余的脂肪。
主要还是偏向于一些中国的食物，然后，就是比较热腾腾的，然后制作也比较简单的。夜市的话也是可以让很多中国同学，包括一些外国人，可以来吃到一些中国特色的一些吃的。
但是我知道这是我跟他讲的这个好吃。我爸爸妈妈从台湾。所以我是American born Taiwanese。
我们中国留学生嘛，还是就是就是一个小团体一个小团体这样比较多。然后，有了 CU 之后，就是我觉得我们 CU 现在目前来说，就是大家都非常团结。我们大概有60-70个人，在美国中国人要团结。然后比如说有一些组织可以把中国人就是凑起来，这些都。我觉得挺好的。然后我们 CU 的话，就是因为现在才刚开始成立嘛，所以我们还在就是继续进步，我还挺满意的。
So my name is Luis Baltasar. I'm a sociology major with an education minor. I'm about to graduate this year, hopefully in spring. I think for mom, she definitely had like a different experience from my dad. Because my dad was already in Mexico when he traveled, because he's from Mexico, he's from Michoacan. So he still didn't have to travel a little bit because he's definitely a lot more down south. But for mom, like she was saying that a lot of what women do is that they have to pretend or they have to look like men. Because a lot of times what occurs is that when you're going on your journey, a lot of gangs or a lot of other cartels and stuff like that, they see migrant groups or people that are moving together, and they take the women or the children, and that's kind of like the first people that they take or that they target because they're the most vulnerable, you know. So what she had to do is that she had to cut her hair, you know, she had to go kind of like the hair of a guy, and then she had to like tape her, you know, to tape like her breasts to, like when she puts a shirt over, you can't really tell, you know. So she said that she had to do that. I'm pretty sure it was difficult for her, you know, because she didn't leave with family, she just left on her own. And then she had to travel like that. So. And then also like in the journeys, you know, whenever you make friends, it's always kind of like in the back of your head of like, damn, like, you know, what if I don't see this person again, you know? Because she would say like a lot of people do get taken away, especially a lot of like women that she would meet, that she'll like befriend. And she'll just kind of be like, damn, you can't really do anything about it. You know, like once those situations do occur, because unless you want to get taken too. My fraternity is Sigma Lambda Beta, and it's a multicultural fraternity. We're Latino based. But we do like to say multicultural because obviously there's a lot of cross-cultural struggles that occur, especially with like when you're talking about migration. So I was able to go to a conference last year, and we were able to, especially because of everything that was going on with ICE and the detention centers, we were able to go to Denver Capitol Building, and it was like brothers from all over from different chapters from all over the nation. And then we had a silent protest about about them holding people into these detention centers. So that was really cool that even though we didn't really, or we had barely met, we were able to stand together for a certain for a certain issue that we all felt collectively was affecting our own communities.
Please don't get hurt.
Yeah. Unless it's you.
No.
No, I'm just kidding. ¿Dejaron aquí en el frío?
People from different organizations, different backgrounds, different cultures to come together and really just embrace the diversity, because that's what we're about. So let's put our hands together for Candelaria.
Candelaria itself does have religious kind of ideologies behind it because it is kind of like a Mexican holiday and it does derive from Catholicism. But I think for us it's more about the ideologies or the values or the morals of building a community, of us just kind of being together, being able to eat, some tamales, also being able to have some performances like from Latino-based dance teams like Sabrosura. That was also one of the dance teams that I was in. So it was really cool for them to be able to perform in those kind of spaces. Even though I don't have a family, I think it's just really cool to be able to be close to my mom, or for her to be the only one in her family to come, and then for me to be here at the UC. You know, I am kind of appreciative of the journey you took because it kind of led me here.
We were looking at an artist and they were just basically like start thinking about the materials and what happens to it if I cut it, what happens to it if I burn it, what happens to it if I boil it, what happens to it if I shred it. So I'm pretty excited. I'm kind of nervous about doing experiments on this wood before I start my project, because if I mess it up, that's it. That's the end of it. Okay, it's gonna be so sad. I don't know what exactly started my interest in dance, but I think for me just like the music, the dancing has always been something so natural, and it connects me all the time with like my grandma and grandpa, my uncle. I remember like we're driving, he's blasting the norteñas, he's blasting the banda, so like whenever a norteña or banda comes out, like I'm like, yeah, bump that shit, like because I think it's amazing. It's one of my favorite projects that I've done. So I ended up calling it Cande, which is the name of my birth mom. And I just kind of like, I wrote this little thing on it, and it's like, I made this project in 2018, and it's like, in hearing the word connections, I think about relationships between a daughter and a mother. So we have this one, and the stump is kind of like what was there, kind of like the whole, like, I went to go look for it, and I didn't do anything to this when I first found the wood. And it's kind of like what I got from my mom. You know, like everyone says, oh, te miras igualita, like que tu mamá when she was like this age, etc. I think growing up, it was always like, you hear like, oh, your like mom's love is like the most unconditional love, like, etc. And it just kind of went back to like my birth mom, and I'm just like, yeah, no, that's not true, because I don't know why she'd be able to leave me then, you know, like. So it's like, it was kind of like that narrative, like how bad am I? How horrible am I that even at like some weeks old, like this mom that's supposed to have this unconditional love for you just like decides to leave you. So then it was that narrative. And then it just kind of went to like getting away from that and like thinking like that, to like, no, well, you know what? I was blessed and I got like 2 more moms. And then like I got my godmother, and then I got my other godmother. So then it was like, no, like, yeah, okay. It sucks that I don't have like my birth mom with me growing up and like have those like supposedly unconditional love connections that maybe other kids did. But it was like, no, I got my grandma, I got my tia, I got my godmother. I got all these strong, powerful women in my life that made up for it like 100 times more.
Мама плакает. У мамы тоже карманчик. Ты хочешь камушки положить? Знаешь, меня за ручку?
My mom came to me a month before my school in Moscow, which is where I went to school, started, and she was like, you are going to a different school and it's in Spain and you're going to be living in this Spanish host family and it's supposed to like culturally integrate you or whatever the word is.
Это что это на уши ты делаешь? Перо?
I mean, the fact that I went there, I appreciate it now, but speaking from me, from an 11, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old me, I despised it.
Бери с собой камушки. Бери с собой камушки, пойдем на качельки качаться. Пошли? Пойдем на качельки качаться. Пойдем?
I'm pretty sure I failed like every class or whatever, first quarter. There's no music or, you know, photography or like none of that was available. And I was like, I don't want to do any of this shit. I'm just not interested. And I hated the place. Like it was just like a nightmare of mine. So kind of there, you know, you watch all the Hollywood movies and shit, and I was like, oh, I want to go to the United States. And it was just like, I always knew that I was interested in photography, but I never attached it to a place. But at some point it became the United States, and the United States is this big thing in Europe.
She's gonna wash the entire playground, dude. Just for free. Cleaning services.
Like it's just this one magic land, right? Once you go there, if you have any desires that don't fit in the place you're in, the United States is a place to go. And then all of a sudden, you know, it just all becomes real. That's how, and that's why I decided I was gonna come here. And I mean, I applied to a bunch of schools and I got into some of them, but my parents, obviously, nor me, couldn't afford it, so I ended up at De Anza College, community college, that's in Cupertino.
Лужа, да, зачем же ты в грязную лужу? Ну всё.
De Anza is significantly smaller than, like, you know, UCSC campus, right? So people in like every area, once the classes break, they go to that. Whoever smokes go to that, you know, that one section. It just gets overcrowded, and people like to talk sometimes.
You good?
I kept seeing Jared there, like, consistently. And at some point we just started a conversation, and we started talking ever since then. And so that's how we met, that's how we started, you know, hanging out with each other, and we started dating eventually, and we moved in together at some point. This was like already towards the end of, like, right before I was to graduate from De Anza and move on.
Round and round, молодец. Round and round, round and round.
So I was set on leaving, and then, you know, surprise! In 9 months, I had Saoirse as my daughter.
Saoirse.
We didn't really think about, it wasn't like, oh, you know, let's take this next month thinking whether that's the right choice or like whether we should know. It was kind of more like, oh, all right, I guess we're gonna have a kid. And for me to stay with the kid once, you know, she was gonna be born, I need to have a proper documents, and my student visa were gonna expire, and like I said, I was planning on leaving, like I wasn't gonna stay. So visa application, especially as a student, you have to go through an interview. Been there for 15 minutes, he's asking me questions that, you know, he has the answers in the paperwork too, but he just needs to ask me the same shit. He asked me a lot of questions like, where's your father before that? Where's your mother? What does your mother do? You know, where does your father work?
Down in the jungle where nobody goes, there's a great big elephant washing his clothes.
It wasn't like a plan. I don't know if that makes sense, you know? We were like, so how do you do this? And you just Google, how do you get married? Because like neither of us had been in this situation before.
Не-не-не, там лужи. I think it started to rain.
You go to this, went to the Santa Clara County, whatever, I forget what it's called, and brought all the documents that we Googled, and that's what it, you know, it said to bring.
See you later. Yeah. Drunken man.
I had to get a couple of things translated, like your birth certificate, because it was in Russian, and they needed a certified translation of it. So I mean, there was a process to it. It wasn't like a one-day thing. We researched, and then we called, and then we did all these things. And then we eventually went in, and we were like, so what's the deal? And she pulled out some documents, and she was just like, yeah, you take here, and you sign here, and next thing I know, I've spent the next 7 months changing my fucking last name everywhere. That was a nightmare. Like, don't ever do that to yourself.
Bye-bye. Как маму зовут?
But yeah, that was it. Take here, sign there, and there we go. We were married.
Kava is a drink. It's a plant. And it's made from the roots of a plant that's found in the South Pacific. It's a 3,000-year-old tradition. It's consumed for one reason and one reason only, and it's not the taste, because it tastes like a root from the earth. Some people have likened it to licking a potato, which is pretty on point. We drink it for the effects. First and foremost, it's going to numb your mouth. This is totally normal. If you start to drool uncontrollably, we'll call an ambulance, but you should be fine. And then afterwards, it has what's called an anxiolytic effect, which means it decreases your anxiety. Sometimes you'll feel just a little slight sense of relaxation. You'll just kind of mellow, in a word, which is why the place is called Mellow. One of the reasons why you don't really hear a lot about kava, this is a very new concept, so to speak, is because it comes from a very isolated part of the world. So it comes to us from a pretty convoluted path. There's a lot of islander expats. They would start their own kava drinking clubs called kalupas that weren't very open unless you were invited in. This kind of closed off enclave cultural drink that was very much just associated with that culture. It wasn't properly talked about and discussed. It wasn't something that was really kind of elaborated on. It was more of like, here's this weird murky thing and give it a shot and drink it. No one really tried to do, make cocktails out of it or really kind of change it up the way that I think we've tried to introduce it. So yeah, the taste is a big barrier, the education's another big barrier, and we've tried to kind of address both of those with our menu and with the spiel and educating people. It's difficult to stay true to the culture without kind of really bastardizing it, and at the same time adapting it to the environment that it's in. We still make it very, very traditionally. We do it by hand. We have a very old school recipe and method. We serve it traditionally in the bilos or the coconut shells, and then we definitely kind of educate people on it. So this isn't something that we just kind of sling off and we're like, here you go, figure it out. This is something that we take the time to explain all the different parts of it. I mean, we've had a lot of South Pacific Islanders that come to the bar. They love it. They're kind of over the moon to see it. I haven't met every South Pacific Islander, so obviously I don't know everyone's opinion on it, but the few that have walked in have always been just so excited. So I have a Tongan friend who, when we played around with the recipes, was just a little dejected that he didn't think of some of these ideas first. He was just like, I can't believe that I never thought to make kava and coconut water as opposed to just, the water that we use. But yeah, I mean, I'm Middle Eastern. So I'm very far removed from the culture. Seeing, hummus is a staple of the Middle East. It's something that we eat day in and day out. And I remember after 9/11, there came a point where even finding Arabic gum in your ingredients list was like a big brouhaha. And they kind of wanted to eliminate that, and people were just, the reactionary fear that you got because of something as innocuous as Arabic gum was really just, it was very hurtful. And then to see hummus all of a sudden thrive, it's great. It's really nice that people are talking about it. Sometimes I'll see something like edamame hummus, and part of me is just like, oh, what are you doing? But at the same time, the fact that the dialogue is there about hummus and we're talking about a food item that's from the Middle East is really heartwarming for me. And I think a lot of South Pacific Islanders kind of feel the same way when they see kava. Sure, they might see a kava chai and just cringe a little bit, just like I do when I see edamame hummus, and I'm like, oh my God, what are you doing? Cultural appropriation is big. Again, coming from the Middle East and having to deal a lot with cultural appropriation, it's tough. But it's something that we try to do, respectfully, and at the same time try to adapt it to the culture.
At the White Beach viewing area, which is one of the 3 main viewing areas here at Año Nuevo, during the breeding season to view the elephant seal birthing and mating and fighting and everything else we come out here to see.
And we lead guided tours during the season for the public to come out and see these beautiful creatures that are behind me right now, and they could possibly see and hear. And I think with the elephant seals, what they're capable of doing, what they have to endure in their life, has just really attracted me to them as far as compared to, they're up there with the sperm whale, they're diving and that type of thing, and the travels that they have to go up to Alaska, out to the far west in the middle of the Pacific. So it's all their endurance. I'm just so impressed with their life.
Seals are great migrators. They come back 3 or twice a year. This is the breeding season. They come back, the females in the spring, early spring, the males in the summer, to molt their fur, which they do every year. They get a new...
So migration is an interesting concept. I'm a biologist, so I usually think of animal migration. And I think about animals moving vast distances because there's a separation in their feeding area and their breeding area. So it's because they need to travel between 2 distant areas in order to survive and reproduce and create the next generation. Animal migration is something that happens in diverse taxa. So birds, mammals, lots of different species migrate. And again, that's probably because there's a need for that to happen. There's a separation in feeding areas and breeding areas. There's major life history events that occur in different geographic areas. And over evolutionary time, species have found a way to make that work. Interestingly, for most animals, that usually occurs on an annual basis. In some species, several years to complete a migration cycle, but it's usually a fairly short time cycle. And it's interesting to compare that with human migration, because I feel that humans migrate for more extreme reasons. It's not just a part of their normal activities, it's to escape something or to seek a new opportunity to permanently move to a location. So that's probably the biggest difference between those two, but in either case, they need to do it. So an elephant seal, it's migrating vast distances, thousands of kilometers across the open ocean to their feeding area. If they don't do that, they're not going to survive and be able to reproduce. Elephant seals are a very unique species along the west coast here because we have many species of marine mammals, but elephant seals are more extreme in basically every single trait. They're longer migrators, deeper divers. They just have an amazing ability to fast and heal their wounds. Just almost anything that we study about them, they are the extreme. So from that aspect, they're just remarkable animals. In terms of their distribution along the California coast and Mexican coast here, basically they traditionally have occupied just the island habitats, so Southern California Channel Islands and some islands down in Mexico. But we think that as we removed terrestrial predators, that opened up additional space for them on the mainland to be able to breed successfully. They're very abundant right now. We have about 212,000 individuals in Mexico and in the US. But if you go back in time, just over 100 years ago, they were thought to be extinct. So they were brought to near extinction because of human hunting, and it was just luck that a few remained at a small island down in Mexico, and we protected them, or I should say the Mexican government protected them. Much later, we protected them, and they've been able to rebound to incredible numbers, probably in line with the numbers there were before that population decline. So a remarkable success story.
Something me and Tristan were thinking about earlier is how it's kind of ironic that elephant seals can migrate from Mexico, but people cannot. Like, you know, humans can't on land, but things you every year see, and there's not. Just kind of like, you know, social constructs of like human race compared to like nature, and how we think that there's this like separation between nature and people.
Mm-hmm. I hadn't made that connection before. That's pretty hilarious. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Nací en Jocotepec, Jalisco, México, y inmigramos para acá en el 75. La razón es porque uno de mis hermanos, el mayor, falleció a la edad de 17 años. Cuando mi hermano falleció, lo sepultaron aquí en Watsonville. Mi mamá siempre quería venir a mirar en dónde habían quedado los restos de mi hermano. So ya entonces vinimos a Watsonville, llegamos a Tijuana, estaba yo chiquitita. La primera vez que mis papás que yo crucé la frontera sin documentos, fui a la escuela aquí desde kinder, y lo que recuerdo que era un poco difícil de entender el racismo, machismo, la opresión. Cuando estaba en tercer grado, por ejemplo, en aquel entonces yo tenía mi mamá, o sea, me ponía mis vestidos que me traía de México bordados. A mí me daba vergüenza, porque yo era la única niña vestida así, con mis tobilleras, mis zapatitos de charol. Para los mexicanos, por ejemplo, eso era ir a la escuela bien vestidita. Pero para mí, yo le decía a mamá, no me pongas trenzas. Pero mi mamá, o sea, no ella hacía lo mejor que podía. Ella no sabía lo que pasaba en la escuela. Un niño me decía wetback, you know, taquitos. Eso fue algo súper impactante del bullying, you know. Y eso me afectó tanto, por decir así, que yo no sentía que tenía voz. Esa es la razón que ahora, por unos cuantos años, he hecho lo que hago. Okay, so la respiración, qué tan importante es respirar. Breathing is essential. Respirar es inhalar por la nariz. Luego podemos empezar un poquito con despertar el cuerpo así, tapping, así, despacito por arriba. Por eso ahora uso esta voz, porque me puedo identificar con ese niño, pero ahora como mujer adulta me puedo identificar con este padre que siempre va a dar lo mejor que ellos tienen. So, si yo puedo ayudar a dejarles saber que hay herramientas como disciplina positiva, programas de padres, programas para mujeres, los círculos que hago ahora de sanamiento, porque para poder fluir necesitamos sanar. So, tuve mi negocio por unos cuantos años, se llamaba Olga's Beauty Shop. Me encantó tener ese negocio por esos años porque pude conectar con la comunidad. Esa es la razón que entiendo muy bien, en realidad, entiendo muy bien las necesidades del pueblo. También eso me ayudó a conectar con los líderes de la ciudad. Por eso me puedo identificar con un puente. Veo la necesidad del pueblo, pero también tengo las conexiones con la ciudad. Entonces yo estoy aquí como tratando de crear un balance. Esa es una gran bendición para mí, poder conectar a esa voz que no se siente tan, que tiene poder.
Those are good numbers. Let's see if I won for this bonus. $40.
Mis papás, o sea, mi papá llegó acá en los 45. Estamos ahorita en el 2019. O sea, cuando empecé esto de servir a la comunidad, a mí hace como 20 años más o menos. Pero ahora está más intenso, más profundo y abogando para el inmigrante. Porque estamos en el 2019 y viviendo esta discriminación con este gobierno no se vale. Yo estoy todavía en crecimiento. No, gracias a ti, gracias a la comunidad que me están ayudando a crecer. Y juntos podemos crear un mejor mundo. Pero ese mundo empieza aquí en mi comunidad.
Because we are the sons and daughters of God. And thank you for everything, and please keep us in mind all the time.
So ahí me siento yo comprometida con mi pueblo, con mi gente. Y número uno, conmigo misma. Seguir practicando lo que sé, porque para eso nací, para servir.
We have Mother Amanda that's from Salina. She's always been with us ever since we invited her over here. She's been with us for the 4 or 5 years that we had this unit in March. She represents the mothers in Salina that have all the same.
Our creation story takes place at Mount Umunum, which is the highest peak in the Santa Cruz Mountains in past times. Our creation story tells us the Creator very specifically gave us our tribal lands, and our tribal territory was clearly defined. And Creator gave us a responsibility to take care of Mother Earth and all living things. And our ancestors took that as a sacred covenant between us and Creator, and we worked hard to fulfill that sacred covenant. Then came the brutal times of the Spanish conquest. They wanted to destroy our culture, our spirituality, our environments, and our humanity. And that's pretty much what they did. The history of California Indians has been ignored, forgotten, and erased. And it's shameful, but yet the truth is needed. And because the truth isn't told, our people have a hard time healing. And so today our people work very hard to recover from that historic trauma and to restore our identity and our pride. In 2006, tribal elders came to a tribal council meeting and they announced that our creation story tells us that we have the responsibility to take care of Mother Earth and all living things. And we have to find a way to get back to do that. And so since that time, we don't own land, and we're a very, very poor tribe. We don't have 1 inch of land. But there are a lot of public places that have land. And so we started making connections with them about restoring our tradition of stewarding and taking care of the lands. But because of our history, we lost a lot of that knowledge of how to take care of the plants and stuff like that. So the Arboretum here at UC Santa Cruz helps us as we work to relearn that indigenous knowledge of how to take care of the plants and how to use them for foods and basketry and medicines and many other things.
These plants were used to make soap root brushes, so on the outer parts of the bulb are a lot of kind of fibrous plant parts that were peeled off and then overlapped together. And then what you can do is boil down the bulb and use that as the glue to hold the kind of the brush parts together of the soap root brush. It was a culture item. They can make a soap root brush out of this. They can make soap out of this. They could eat it, both the leaves and the bulb, and it was a fish poison. So this plant here is an Arctostaphylos. It's what's commonly known as manzanita, and so manzanita in Spanish means little apple. The berries were an important food harvest in the summertime for the tribe. Eat the berries raw. So you pop a few in your mouth, you crush them on the roof of your mouth, you suck out the powdery insides, and then you spit out the rest. In the ethnographies of Ascension Solorzano, the tribal matriarch, she talks about using these berries and turning it into a cider. So this is a ceanothus. They're also known as wild lilacs or blue blossoms here in California. The main purpose of this plant was to be used as a soap. And the part that you use are actually the flowers here. So if you actually take a handful of flowers, see if this will actually work today. I'll get a lot of them this time. Because there's so much, I don't feel bad about taking a lot of them. Some of them lather up more than others, but that would be used as a soap. The Land Trust was formed in 2013, and basically what it is the vehicle that the Amamutsan Tribal Band is using to help them relearn, engage in collaborations with Western agencies. And the main program of the Amamutsan Land Trust is the Native Stewardship Corps, and that's when tribal members, usually ages 18 to mid-30s, they work alongside all these different land managers. So all of this is really an effort to help them not only relearn, traditional ecological knowledge and past lifeways and cultural practices, but also to help them heal from historical trauma that they've had for some time since colonization.
My name is Enrique Arce Martinez. I'm a second-year transfer senior. I work at Undocumented Student Services, and I'm the VP of Diversity and Inclusion on campus. Undocumented to me is simply that I lack papers, or people lack papers. Being undocumented is a limit on my freedom. I view my future differently. I need to be aware and have a lot of social capital so that I can find jobs that won't require me to have like a social security and stuff. And I think a lot about how I can be deported. I mean, I have DACA currently, which stops me from being deported. But a lot of folks that are undocumented, like that is a ever-present fear in their lives. I feel like I left behind an identity. Don't really feel Mexican. I don't really know what it is to be Mexican. My parents told me a lot growing up of how beautiful Mexico is and was, and a lot of their memories in there, and that's their land, they want to return because they grew up there and they have a lot of love for it. But for me, I want to visit, and I low-key feel like resentful of like people that can go and visit my homelands while I can't, because if I leave, I can't come back. I think something I gained was maybe a lot of anxiety and depression from being in this country that rejects you every day. Like, it really had just gotten to me. Like, I really don't understand how people can be so hateful towards others without even knowing them, and just simply for the lack of paperwork. At the same time, like, I gained a new perspective that I would not have had otherwise if I had had citizenship somewhere else. Being undocumented has given me an appreciation for life. Every day that I'm not in a detention center is fucking victory for me. And it gives me like that perspective, and that helps me to keep going and understand like my own privileges. Like, because I am undocumented, but I still have DACA, and I am going to university. I have a lot of knowledge and experience that a lot of other folks don't. When they push for like legislation that supports undocumented immigrants, they're always focusing on the so-called dreamers, which are people like me that came to the US when they were very young and are trying to go to school, and we've been here for a very long time, and we've been like acculturated into this country. But that unfortunately like leaves out tens of millions of people that are also undocumented, like our parents, etc., people like that. And then the good immigrant narrative, like immigrants are supposed to be like exceptional, like when piece of shit Trump was like, oh, they don't bring our best or whatever. It's like this assumption that if someone migrates, they're supposed to be like a doctor, they're supposed to be like incredible, and immigrants just aren't allowed to be just like regular people or like flawed or boring people or whatever, And DACA too is very like arbitrary, it's very stupid, it's just a band-aid. You get like temporary relief for like 2 or 3 years, and you get to work and stuff. You get to survive in this country legally. But you know, you're just kept in this limbo. People honestly think that there's like a pathway to citizenship involved with it, but like there's nothing. So you just keep paying the government protection money. The illegality of being is something that weighs heavily on all of us. Like every day, you know, you still have the tension in your body and it never really leaves. I have let my undocumentedness like radicalize me. For a lot of other folks, they are more fearful and they just stay in the shadows or they try to assimilate and stuff. But for me, like being undocumented has enriched my college experience. Like again, like we said, because we are so underrepresented, like anything pretty much will be of a great benefit because we are not a community that is really talked about or researched or cared about, I guess. When people pity us, like we're just some like puppy or something, that is also very like dehumanizing in and of itself. Like we don't need pity. Pity is so useless, or like guilt and stuff. Like we don't need that. We need like anger and we need like action. Well, I'm really interested in social work and community organizing as well as farming. That's where I see like finding fulfilling work. At the farm, like a lot of students that go there kind of take it as like a hobby or just like, oh, I'm like a hippie, I like to mess in the dirt or whatever. But for me, you know, it's very different because I want to be involved in like land management and I want to heal my relationship with the earth when all my undocumented family has been like exploited in agriculture and we've always been cheap, expendable labor. So I want to flip that script, you know, I want to take that agency. You know, all people of color have a very negative relationship with agriculture and stuff for one reason or another. You know, black people had slavery, and then like myself and like a lot of like Asian communities, etc., have always been exploited in farm work. So a lot of folks have been like really alienated from that type of work, but it is such beautiful, loving work that it just really fills me with a lot, and it makes me really value being alive. I'm just in love with it, and I'm in love with the people that love it. Myself, I have always found more safety in visibility, but obviously for some folks it feels way more dangerous. Like I'm accustomed to it at this point, but I really feel that we need to be more unified in terms of like taking up space and like showing ourselves, because I'm very adamant that we have nothing to hide, you know, we have nothing to be ashamed about. So we're just simply existing. We're not like, our existence isn't violence, isn't like a crime in and of itself.